All right, Christina, here's the problem you asked about. Hopefully this will help you out. So whenever you have a square root in an equation, if there's just one square root, you can get that term by itself by getting everything else on the other side, and you can square both sides of the equation. And that turns out to be at least a fairly simple problem. However, when you have two square roots that are separated in a single equation, that turns into a slightly longer problem. The first step is getting one of the two square roots by itself. Doesn't matter which one. I'm going to get the x minus 9 square root by itself. The way that you do that is you subtract the x plus 6 over to this side of the equation. And the equation now looks like that. And all you can do to start to simplify this is square both sides. Now that's going to get rid of the square root on the left-hand side because you have the square of a square root. And the square and the square root cancel, you just have x minus 9. Now on the right side, you actually have two terms. You have the 5 and you have the square root of x plus 6. Those two terms, if you want to square that whole thing, you actually have to FOIL it out. You have to FOIL or multiply it out. You have to think of it like this. 5 minus root x plus 6 times 5 minus root x plus 6. And you want to multiply the first two terms, the outer two terms, the inner two terms, the last two terms. So if you multiply the first two terms together, you get 25. If you multiply the outer two terms together, you get 5 times negative square root of x plus 6. That's negative 5 square root x plus 6. If you multiply the inner two terms together, you get the same thing. And if you multiply the last two terms together, well, you get negative square root of x plus 6 times negative square root of x plus 6. The negative times the negative gives you a positive. And the square root of x plus 6 times the square root of x plus 6, I'll write it in two steps. You're multiplying it by itself, so it's the square root of x plus 6 squared. Of course, you know that that square and that square root cancel each other out. So we can simplify this a little bit. Notice that these two terms are exactly the same. You have a minus 5 root x plus 6 and a minus 5 root x plus 6. Now, these are actually like terms. It's almost as if you had a minus 5y minus 5y. You know that you could combine those two things and you get negative 10y. Well, it's not y in this case, it's root x plus 6, but you can still combine those two terms and you get minus 10 root x plus 6. And as I said before, the root and the square cancel and you're just left with plus x plus 6. Now, that is something that you can simplify. Oh, let's see. You can actually subtract x from both sides of the equation because there's an x here and there's an x here, and you end up canceling both of those x's out. You can also subtract 25 from both sides of the equation and subtract 6 from both sides of the equation. It's a little bit sloppy there, so my apologies. But everything cancels on the right side, and you're left with a negative 10 root x plus 6. On the left side, the x's cancel each other out, and you have a minus 9, a minus 25, and a minus 6. If you subtract all that stuff, I believe it's negative 40 that you get. Now, no matter what happens in this step in the equation, you're going to be left with a square root in the problem. The reason that is because you started with two square roots, you squared both sides of the equation to get rid of one of them, but you're still left with this other one. So your goal at this point is always going to be to get this other square root by itself. The way to do that at this point, well, first we moved everything to the other side of the equation, and the square root term is by itself now. You're going to make your life a lot easier if you divide through by whatever number is in front of that. At least in this problem, we're going to divide through by a negative 10. that will leave your square root of x plus 6 all by itself on one side of the equation. And on the left, you have negative 40 divided by negative 10. That's just 4. Now we're at a point where we have one square root left in the problem. We can get rid of it really easily by squaring. We square both sides of the equation, and on the right, the square and the square root cancel. We just have that one term, so they cancel each other out, and you're just left with x plus 6. On the left, you're left with 16. 4 squared is just 16. And it looks to me like the final answer to this problem is going to be you subtract 6 from both sides and you get x equals 10. So hopefully that helps you out. Let me know if you have any questions.